They told you your blood was sacred. You were born to rule, not by merit, but by lineage. That purity ran in your veins, and keeping it undiluted was your family's sacred duty. But now your hands tremble. Your mouth won't close. Your spine curves like a question mark, and your mind, fogged and broken, can barely hold a thought. You are not cursed. You are inherited. The final product of a royal bloodline so obsessed with itself that it folded inward, generation after generation, until it produced you. Not a king, but a genetic graveyard. Across continents and centuries, history is littered with men just like you. Born into power, but crushed by the weight of bloodlines that turned toxic. This is the horrifying truth of what happens when families choose bloodline over biology. And no dynasty chose it more fanatically than the Habsburgs. Let's begin with the last of them. Before we dive in, if stories like this fascinate you, the hidden costs of power, the dark truths buried in royal tombs, consider subscribing and leave a comment to tell us where you're watching from. The mirror doesn't lie not when you look like this. Your jaw juts forward so far you can't close your mouth. Your tongue, thick and unruly, fills the space like it doesn't belong. Eating is a ritual of pain. Speaking, a humiliating struggle. Your face is pale, your limbs twitch with palsy, and your eyes too wide, too vacant, stare back at you with a helplessness you've never been able to escape. You are Charles II of Spain. You are 38 years old, but your body belongs to a dying man. You've never fathered a child, never led an army. You rule the greatest empire on earth, but you don't truly rule anything, not your ministers, not your court, not even your own body. You were born this way, not by accident, by design, because for over 150 years, your family believed that keeping the bloodline pure was worth any price. They married cousin to cousin, uncle to niece, again and again, until the family tree no longer branched. It curled inward, like a snake eating itself. And you are what it finally spat out. Your inbreeding coefficient is 0.254 higher than the child of siblings. 16 generations of royal incest have left their mark in your bones, brain, fertility, and your fate. The court whispers that you are El Hechizado, the bewitched. They light candles. They pray for demons to be cast out. But this isn't the work of curses or spirits. This is science. Centuries before it had a name. And to understand your suffering, we must go back. Because Charles II wasn't the beginning. He was the end. It began in 1516, when the House of Habsburg took control of Spain. What followed wasn't just monarchy, it was a genetic experiment in absolute control. Of the 11 marriages contracted by Spanish Habsburg monarchs between 1450 and 1661, 9 were between blood relatives. Over time, the same faces, the same genes, the same recessive traits circled endlessly through the family line. At first, the signs were subtle. Take Charles I of Spain, better known as Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, born in 1500, a man whose empire spanned half of Europe and the Americas. He was brilliant, ambitious, and for a while, healthy. But portraits tell a quieter truth. The elongated face, the sagging jaw, the hollow stare. His mouth hung open when he wasn't thinking about it. The first visible trace of the Habsburg jaw, a deformity that would grow worse with each generation. Charles married Isabel of Portugal, his cousin. Her mother was his aunt. Their son? Philip II. A man brilliant in theology, rigid in politics, and utterly broken by the legacy of his genes. Philip II was deeply pious, obsessively devout, and slowly, tragically, unfit to rule. He couldn't adapt. He couldn't flex. He couldn't think beyond the details in front of him. Some historians now believe he suffered from autism spectrum traits, possibly severe depression, the mental fallout of inbreeding depression made manifest in policy. He spent hours rewriting royal letters, obsessed with phrasing. He launched the Spanish Inquisition with fanatic energy, hunting heretics while his empire crumbled around him. He married 4 times, and yes, 3 of those brides were family. His final wife was his niece, Anna of Austria, the daughter of his own brother. From that union came Philip III, and Philip III was not okay. Born in 1578, Philip III was physically weak and mentally slow. He drooled constantly. He couldn't chew food without help. His speech was slurred beyond recognition, and his understanding of the world seemed frozen at the level of a child. Courtiers described him as kind but vacant, harmless but hopeless. He spent hours in prayer, obsessed with omens and ritual, while the government fell into the hands of corrupt favorites. Spain continued to rot from the inside, but the bloodline kept going. Philip III married Margaret of Austria, another cousin. Their child would inherit not just the throne, but every twisted thread of the Habsburg gene pool. Philip IV, born in 1605, ruled for 4 decades. But the portraits of him, painted with brutal honesty by Diego Velázquez, show a man haunted. The Habsburg features had worsened. The elongated skull, the drooping lips, the lifeless eyes. He suffered from what we'd now call major depressive disorder, possibly with psychotic breaks. He spent weeks in isolation. He spoke to paintings. He believed plots swirled in every shadow. He was functional, but barely. When his first wife, another cousin, died, he remarried. Not for love, not for politics, but for blood. His new bride was Mariana of Austria, his niece. That marriage produced a child who would be the final result of this doomed dynasty. Charles II. And so we return to the mirror, to the trembling hands, the drooling mouth, the crooked spine, the eyes that cannot focus. Charles II did not ask for this, but he paid for it every hour of his life. He died childless in 1700, the Spanish Habsburg line ending with him. His death triggered a European war, but it also ended the most extreme case of dynastic inbreeding in modern history. What the Habsburgs created was not divine blood, it was suffering, sanctified by tradition. The statues say you're a god, but the truth is carved deeper, in your bones, not the stone. Your skull stretches unnaturally long, your chest narrows, your hips flare wide, breasts swell on your torso, your belly protrudes like that of a woman heavy with child. You are Akhenaten, pharaoh of Egypt, and your body bears the signature of a dynasty that married too close, for far too long. For generations, Egypt's rulers married sisters, daughters, nieces believing their blood was divine, and must remain untouched. You were born from this belief, likely the son of cousins, possibly the brother of your own wife. You married your daughters, too, not out of desire but duty. Modern science offers possibilities your priests could never explain. Aromatase excess, Marfan syndrome, craniosynostosis. Your deformities weren't curses, they were the inevitable cost of closed bloodlines. You tried to remake Egypt. You banished the gods. You built a city for the sun. But no revolution could change what was already written in your chromosomes. Your body had already begun to collapse. And in your son, born of a union even closer, that collapse would reach its final, tragic shape. Let's meet Tutankhamun, the child of a brother and sister, and the boy who would carry this broken legacy to the grave. You were born a god. At least, that's what they called you, Nebkheperur Tutankhamun, ruler of the 2 lands, son of Aten, the living Horus. But you are also the son of a brother and sister, and from the moment you first cried out in your nurse's arms, your body began to fail you. Your foot twists sharply inward, a clubfoot, so painful that walking becomes an act of will. Your spine curls into an unnatural arc. You lean when you stand. You stumble when you try to run. Inside your tomb, buried beneath gold and incense, archaeologists would find over 130 walking sticks. Not ceremonial, not symbolic, just necessary. You limp through palaces, prayers, and life. And you know, even at your young age, that this isn't how a god is supposed to live. Thousands of years after your death, modern science would open your tomb again not to rob it, but to scan it. CT images of your mummy reveal the truth your priests tried to hide. A cleft palate, splitting the roof of your mouth. A severely curved spine, possibly scoliosis. Bone necrosis in your left foot, the bone itself dying while you still lived. A fractured femur, never healed, maybe the final blow. Genetic testing confirmed what your body had long since exposed. Your parents were full siblings. You were born with multiple congenital disorders, compounded by generations of inbreeding. Your immune system was weakened. Malaria entered your bloodstream, and with it came fever, pain, delirium, and death. You were only 19. The gods weren't cruel. They didn't twist spines or swell tongues. They didn't cleave palates or poison wombs. Humans did that, with choices, repeated, defended, and enshrined. Because the science is simple. When two unrelated people have a child, their genes balance each other. But when cousins marry cousins or worse, siblings marry siblings, the child receives identical copies of dangerous genes. Recessive traits rise to the surface, and the more often it happens, the more damage piles up. Geneticists call it inbreeding depression, but kings and pharaohs called it divine right. They didn't need a microscope to see what was happening. They had mirrors. They had children who couldn't walk, grandsons who couldn't speak, heirs who died before they could rule, and still, they did it again. These weren't monsters. They were victims of families who valued bloodline over breath. So, when we look back, not at the crowns, but at the crooked spines beneath them, we see a different story. One not of glory, but of warning. A reminder that power, left unchecked, folds inward. That purity, pursued too far, becomes poison. That even kings, born to rule, can be broken by the very blood that made them royal. The mirror doesn't lie, and neither does history.